Hello and welcome back to the 19th episode of the Create Stuff podcast, where I interview people who create unique or less mainstream forms of content and stuff in general. I'm your host, Shaun Saxum. Before we get started, a few quick things. If you can, leave a like, comment, subscribe. It helps a ton. If you're on a podcast platform, rate or follow or whatever you want. Seriously, all of that does a lot in getting this out there. And also, if you can tell your friends who you think might be interested in even just one episode, you got like that one friend who's really into the Dream SMP, tell them about one of those episodes. You got that guy who's like a fan of Nintendo infotubers, hey, look at this one, you should recommend it to them. Seriously, word of mouth is the best way this podcast can spread at the moment. I also have a Patreon. Even just $1 helps me immensely. Also, my audio quality is a little bit worse than usual in this episode. It hopefully will not happen again. I am currently improving my setup and will soon be moving locations to hopefully somewhere that will have some better audio quality in general, some better acoustics. Enjoy the episode. Welcome back to the something or other episode of the Create Stuff podcast. I don't even know what episode this is anymore. Everything is just thrown out the window. Today, my guest is Shesez from Boundary Break. Am I pronouncing your name right?
It's actually Shesez.
Shesez. I really should know that considering how many of your videos I watched. But welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, it's good to be here, man.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I've actually been a fan of your channel for a very long time. Even like, I want to say like, even 4 or 5 years ago, I still remember your videos on like Smash Brothers Brawl and Ocarina of Time. Used to be a huge fan of that as a kid.
Oh my god, yeah, you're like a Gen 1er, I call it. It's like the first year that I was doing this. That's cool, man.
Yeah, man, I'm a Gen 1er. It was actually a little bit insane that you said yes, I'm not gonna lie. I really did not see that coming. But thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, it's always my pleasure, and I listened to a couple. I think you sent links before, didn't you? What was the?
I think so.
What was the one that you sent me? Yeah, it's whatever. But anyways, I'm happy to be here. I'm more than happy to do interviews every once in a while, and you just caught me at a good time. You know, like right now, it's like after the holiday season, I'm not as busy, so I'm happy to do it.
Right, perfect. Well, just to get into this, could you tell us what you do for people who might not be aware?
So I basically take the camera anywhere we want to try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. And I've said that so many times in my life that I don't ever have to do a retake on them. But yeah, essentially what happens is on my channel, I take video games that are generally popular and take the camera and modify it to move in any direction. And I consolidate my show to find the most interesting things that you would find out of bounds and create I curate them. I curate all the best stuff that you could find out of bounds and work it into a 10 to 15 minute long YouTube video.
So do you often have to, do you often find things that you have to decide whether you want to keep it in or not?
Yes and no. So most of the time I just try to get everything in the episode, but there's just occasionally times where it's super redundant. So like I found a dev cube underneath the ground, and of course I'll feature that in the episode. But then when we get onto cube number 5 or 8, it's like, okay, how many times can I talk about a similar looking dev cube in this game? You know, so that's the only time I cut out content. Otherwise, everything makes it into the episode. So that's why sometimes you'll see it run to about 30 minutes, and it's just because that game had a huge boon of content, I guess.
Interesting. Okay, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, not gonna lie. That just made me curious there, and I wanted to ask before I forgot it. But...
Oh, no problem. I thought that's awesome.
Yeah, all right, so we'll backpedal just a little bit. So tell me real quickly about your other series, Region Break.
Well, okay, so Region Break is a newer series that I've put together where basically...
Oh, I meant to say Region Locked, but I do want to know about Region Break too.
Oh, I don't run Region Locked. Region Locked is Digital Gaming.
Oh, I'm smart. Okay, I'm really getting things mixed up.
You know, you're not the first person to make that mistake, though. Like, I see it all the time. There's people that say they are genuinely thankful that I've made episodes for Region Locked, and I'm like, you know, I appreciate that. I can't take the credit, though.
I think I wrote down what is Region Locked, and then every single other line is Region Break. I guess, nice. All right, go on about Region Break. I need to change the name on this, so I'm going to keep saying Region Locked.
Yeah, so Region Break is a series where I take the same game from 2 different regions and contrast all the differences between those 2 versions. Sometimes it'll be how a game is localized, which is something that, you know, that's probably the most involved aspect of the show because I have to bring on someone that can actually read Japanese dialect usually. But the other is Like little things like graphical differences, musical differences. You'd be surprised, especially in earlier games, how many things that developers will do to make it seem more appropriate for a new region or make something better because they really want it to have a strong impact in the region that they're porting the game to. So I've covered, I think, about 6 episodes now of Region Break, and it's definitely something that can continue onward in terms of viewership and also just the wealth of games to choose from. There's a good pool of games that I think would make interesting YouTube videos. And so, yeah, I
can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I think I started about 6 or 7 months ago.
I see. Wow. I really love that series. So far of what I've seen of it, I think you did. I loved your Earthbound video on it. That was super interesting.
Oh, thank you. I think right now that's one of the least viewed videos in the series. I think the only one that wins out in terms of least viewed is the Contra video. But yeah, thank you for watching that one. I had a good time making it too.
Yeah, it was super cool. I love that you also go through the manuals, not just a game. That's like something I never see in videos.
Yeah, I think it's just that someone never thought to do it. And, also it is a bit of an investment money-wise, because then you have to like import the games and stuff like that, make sure that it's complete in box. And, CIBs are usually expensive, and no matter which region you're buying from. But it's just a little bit of extra. For me, it's not even just like putting in the extra effort. It's that it makes the production of the video all the more interesting to me. So getting a translator involved and finding all those differences, it honestly brings a lot of passion to the videos themselves in my respect. Because, there are stuff like the cutting room floor that will cover all sorts of similar content. But yeah, it's like you said, nobody really seems to do, boxes and manual contrasts. And that's just one little thing to kind of separate me from the pack, I guess.
Super cool. I love that stuff. Maybe that's the game collector inside of me coming out. But I love seeing the old stuff like manuals. I remember on the way home from like the store at GameStop, I have like Super Mario Galaxy Wii in my hands. I'm just flipping through the manual, waiting to put the game in. It really just brings up that nostalgic feeling to me.
What's funny is that Mario Galaxy is giving you that nostalgic feeling, because that's only one generation behind where they stopped. Like they started weaning them out.
Yeah. I guess I was lucky in that aspect that I was right there. Though maybe a little bit later I would have just had my phone instead.
Yeah, well, the stuff that I'm working with is like Gen 1 and Gen 2 of Nintendo. And let me tell you, especially from Japan, they have really interesting smells because of how old they are. A lot of the time I like smell them and I'm like, this smells like my grandparents' house. And then I have this like a moment where I'm like, oh God, things from my generation are starting to smell like my grandparents' house. That's not good.
Oh God! All right. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's talk a little bit more about Boundary Break before we come back to Region Break.
Sounds good. Yes.
Make sure I say the right thing there. Okay, so can you take me through the process of making a Boundary Break video?
Sure. So first, I have to find out if there's a camera available or if there's a tool creator available that can make a camera. So that's a good portion of production. Believe it or not, it's one of those things that really slows me down compared to other people on YouTube, is trying to find out if there's a camera that's viable. So I'll go into that and see and test and do more testing until I figure out, okay, this is something that I can explore the game fully, or heck, there's such a high demand for this game, I'm willing to make some sacrifices in terms of being able to use a camera tool just to get something and make people happy. Mm-hmm. So then from there, that's where the collecting begins. And basically, at this point, I do not play the games legitimately. I do everything I can to supersede any grind, or rather just get rid of any grind. And so that includes like if I can jump high, or if I can take no damage, or if I can kill enemies that would take 15 minutes long to kill in one hit. Whatever it takes to just make the process as fast as possible while still exploring the entirety of the game's content, like every level, every cutscene, every character model, like everything outside the skybox, underneath the ground. I have to look at everything, because from my experience, I've learned that there's just so much that is available in every given aspect of going through the game's geometry. So that's where the heavy load comes in. That's where I spend a majority of my time, which ends up more often than not being slightly longer than playing through the game legitimately, because you're just kind of stopping to smell the roses in every given area. And so then once I beat the game, once I've known that I've gone through the entirety of the game's content, I now have a whole mess of video clips. And this is where I basically, back in the day, I used to be able to just memorize all the clips that I collected and just kind of conjure up in my head about a category for each. Or in some earlier episodes, I would literally go in chronological order. But then I started to realize it's like, okay, it's like I'm reintroducing similar concepts that I was talking about 5 minutes ago. Why don't I just lump these two into a similar category instead? So I've started doing categories. Now, as I've learned to pick up every conceivable thing, I decided, okay, I'm going to categorize them as I go along, or spend one full workday looking at each individual clip and writing in a category for it, like numerizing it. Like this is subject 1, subject 2, subject 3, subject 4. And at the end of every subject, I do a zoom out as well. So I have a pool of zoom out clips, panning the camera away from the environment so you can see as much of the environment as possible. And they kind of add themselves as scene breakers, essentially. And and then from there, I record audio for all those clips that are now fully organized. I don't do scripts. I just look at the clips briefly, and then I talk about them candidly. And
really?
Yeah. And then I'll just kind of edit out any ums or pauses or stuttering or stammering and make it nice and clean sounding. And then that's when I go into the video editing phase, grab some music off of YouTube, working to the background, and just compile it all together. And that's how I make a boundary break video.
Wow, super interesting. I honestly never thought about how there's like, not even just the cameras, but so many other tools you could use to break stuff in a game to see what's beyond the barriers. Like even just using stuff like no-clip, or I guess no-clip is kind of obvious, but like invincibility or other cheats. That's super cool.
Oh yeah, cheat tables are like a big win for someone. Like doing this show on an actual console it's a bit daunting because you have less of those resources available to you. Anytime I can play any of these games on a PC, there's bound to be somebody that decided they need to have a whole mess of cheats for that video game, and so it helps me immensely.
Right. You said a cheat table?
Right, for PC games, people oftentimes, they'll make an executable program that attaches itself to the game that like gives you a whole list of cheats. Like you'll press like a function key to give yourself like max money or invincibility and stuff like that.
Like a Game Genie or a the other one. Oh my god, I can't remember what
Game
it's called.
Shark, yeah.
Game Shark,
Action Replay, yeah.
Action Replay. That was the one I used as a kid.
Oh really? Oh, that's cool.
Oh yeah. That's nostalgic for me. But super cool, super interesting. What is the most interesting thing you ever found in a Boundary Break episode?
All right, so my number one favorite discovery that was completely undocumented was in Punch-Out for Wii. So in a boxing match with Piston Hondo, he's reading a book in between rounds, and you never get to see what's in the book. But by taking the camera over, like in the inner pages of the book, you can find legitimate panels of the Sailor Moon manga.
Really?
Yes, which is not supposed, like that's a big no-no because that's a copyright issue, and it is distorted. It is adjusted so that there's no actual spoken dialogue. Like the dialogue boxes are messed with, and the panels are also arranged from various pages of Sailor Moon, but they are all legitimate panels from the Sailor Moon manga. And again, this was completely undocumented prior to publishing it on Boundary Break, which I was shocked by. And it turns out, too, I did a follow-up video because one of the developers who had left the company, Next Level Games, reached out to me and basically said, I know all about this. If you want more information, let's talk. And so we talked, and they were like, yeah, there was this massive issue where it was caught last second, and that was 1 second too late. And they had to publish it that way in the US, but in Japan, they altered it so that it no longer has Sailor Moon panels. And they also reportedly, supposedly, according to this person, Nintendo preemptively reached out to Bandai Namco and settled it before it ever went to court.
Wow, how interesting. Imagine that court case being, imagine the headlines there.
Right.
Gosh.
The only issue with this discovery is that people make this misconception that I started this. I made someone lose their job, or I made Nintendo pay millions of dollars. Far from it. I discovered this years after Nintendo did all these things behind the scenes. So,
right. I can imagine. So, what is that what's stopping you from actually putting it in a video?
Oh no, it's in a video. It's in the Punch Out.
It is?
Yeah, it's in the Punch Out video, starring Summoning Salt.
Oh, super cool. I thought you said, I thought I heard you say it was undocumented, but that's super cool.
No, previously undocumented.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Super cool. I have to watch that now. Summoning Salt. That's very cool. So, what inspired Boundary Break originally?
So believe it or not, there was generally no inspiration behind Boundary Break, if you can believe that. I guess the most inspiration, which might come as a shock, is something like the Angry Video Game Nerd, because what happened was I was during a generation where YouTube was not really meant to be a produced content website. It was just people doing vlogs or doing diary documentary stuff on their lives and stuff like that. But then one day I'm on a GameFAQs forum and someone's like, oh, you got to check out the Angry Video Game Nerd. And so I checked it out and I loved it. And I started adoring YouTube, and I started looking for similar content to his, and it sucked me into the YouTube the ecosystem of YouTube, and I became a huge viewer, and I wanted to be a creator. I always loved entertainment, and I never knew how I could actually get myself wedged into that field. And there was a certain point in time where I was like, I want to do YouTube badly. And I was trying to do reviews or top 10s or comparison lists and stuff like that. None of it was really landing, and I certainly did not have the presence to really make an impact on YouTube with my personality alone at the time. And but I always knew that this is something I wanted to do. And I knew also that it comes with experience, that you get better at doing YouTube and stuff. And I had a little bit of experience underneath my belt, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to figure out how to use a mouse pointer to replicate the IR pointer for a Wii. And ironically enough, my favorite discovery was also the game that set this all into motion. It was Punch Out Wii. And so I'm rummaging through all the options on this program that I'm using, and I see an option for free look, and I thought maybe this is what I'm looking for, and I click on it, and then suddenly I'm manipulating the perspective of a game that has a very strict perspective. There's almost no camera movement, and I was blown away. So what I did was I posted a clip onto YouTube. It was raw, and a website that I had been trying to get my content featured on for a couple of years suddenly just promoted this raw clip. And I was like, uh-oh, I got something on my hands here. So I go on YouTube and I type in all the keywords that I could possibly think of that may bring up a show that has this idea that I have. And nobody was doing it. Not pretty much no one. And if I'm being incredibly honest, the only thing that I was able to find after I started doing Boundary Break and not before was that there was this one person that was doing a series of videos for Silent Hill 2 with no commentary or anything like that. But I couldn't find them when I was trying to make my search. And so that was the closest thing. And so with that in mind, I was like, well, I can produce this into a show. No problem. And so I started making what my idea is of a show. And believe it or not, it's not that I hated it, but I wasn't actively engaged with infotubers, including video game infotubers. So I was trying to separate myself from stuff like Did You Know Gaming, Son of a Glitch, and Beta 64 and all that stuff. And it just kind of, I was basically reined in over time and realized okay, look, it may not be the content that I consume, but this is certainly content I can produce. And so I slowly became, my own identity as far as what an infotuber is. And and so that's how the show kind of formed into what it was. I never really watched any of those shows to gain inspiration from, which is basically what I'm saying. Like, my true inspirations are people like James Rolfe and stuff like that, and it just kind of got kicked out of me as I was making more and more episodes of Boundary Break.
Super interesting. I'm surprised you weren't actually a fan of infotubers before you started.
No, yeah, I mean, like, again, great content. Is just I went more towards the and I still do to this day. I tend to lean a little more towards people that produce like characters, like the Nostalgia Critic and Arlo and stuff like that. Well, though he's news, but he's still his own identity and character and stuff like that. It's interesting to me.
Arlo's definitely got a very specific character with like his avatar and everything.
Yeah. Oh, Nitro Red's another good example. Some Call Me Johnny or The Completionist. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, naming all my favorites. What around how long ago was it that you got started?
I'd say 5 or 6 years at this point. It's probably pushing 6, but I think I'm still on year 5.
I see. And is that like around the time when a lot of other infotubers started to, like, in the video game sphere at least, started to pop up, or were you a little bit after like the boom started to happen, I suppose?
I think I was a little bit after. I think a lot of people got inspired by people like Son of a Glitch and Did You Know Gaming and stuff like that. And so, you started to see a lot of like, oh, I can do that too type channels. And I think I kind of carved out my own space in that field because I suppose it was starting to get saturated at that point. But yeah, I think it became more and more apparent what I was surrounded with as I was doing Boundary Break. There's people that predate me and stuff like that. Not with Boundary Break as a concept, but as a gaming infotuber. And right. But because I'm Boundary Break, these people start introducing themselves more and more and express appreciation or interest in my show. And so I become familiarized with them. So it's hard to say, honestly, but I do think that I probably was on the cusp of where the boon started.
Interesting. Honestly, hearing you say a lot of these names just like gives me this intense sense of nostalgia, because like The Completionist, Son of a Glitch, Did You Know Gaming, Boundary Break, of course. It's like I remember watching those videos so much as a kid. I love this stuff.
Oh, really? Yeah. I'm an equal parts fan. So it's like when I get to meet these people in real life, it's like surreal, and
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like over time you realize it's like, okay, what am I thinking? Like Swanky Box and stuff like that, or
Swanky Box.
Yeah, he's he honestly, he was one of the first people to appreciate my channel and help promote it and stuff like that. Yeah, but he's also an infotuber essentially, but he's got his hand in a lot of pockets in terms of YouTube content. It's kind of interesting. But
for sure, I love Swanky Box.
Oh, you have heard of Swanky Box?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm like I maybe not so much as I used to be, but I love video game infotubers. This stuff is super interesting to me. I listen to it a lot.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, dude. Well, then I'm glad that I'm here. I'm in good company then.
Oh yeah. I'm very excited to talk to you, of course. But to get back on topic, how do you choose a game for Boundary Break? What are like the criteria you're looking for?
So sadly, as far as perpetuating YouTube as a career, there is the aspect of, will this game be popular enough? Will people actually care? And then there's but there is the counterbalance where I do want to have a personal vested interest in the game as well. It makes it far less tedious, mind-numbing, for example, I haven't gotten started on my next project yet because there is this promise that I should be able to get a camera for Elden Ring really soon, and I'm like really into Elden Ring at the moment. So yeah, so it's kind of stalling my content just a slight bit, but I'm hoping that by tomorrow or the next day I'll have an Elden Ring camera in my hands. But yeah, the idea is usually to appeal to the audience and also appeal to myself in some degree. And the audience at this point really does know what they want to see as far as stuff out of bounds. So So, it's not even so much like, oh, the game is super popular, just cover it. The audience has like an attunement to like, oh, I bet you there'd be a lot of cool stuff out of bounds in this video game. Please cover it, she says. And when I get enough requests like that, I'll oftentimes figure out a way to make it happen. But yeah, it's like there's still like if I can cover a game that is popular and on my radar as far as my personal interest, it's like cookies and cream, peanut butter and jelly. Like it's the perfect combination. And that's like what I will immediately go for before something that will get me banger views like Fortnite. I mean, I do want to cover Fortnite at some point, but I don't have a personal vested interest, and that's why it's taken so long to actually produce one. So long as there's a trail of games that I enjoy, that's where the direction of the channel tends to go. So, yeah.
Right. Completely fair. I think the stuff like this really requires some passion and like care about what you're talking about, and when you can feel that in a video like one of yours or any video of this type, it automatically makes it so much more interesting, so much easier to get invested in it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like a big part of it is like if I'm interested, you get that level of immersion when you're watching it. You can kind of feel the energy, and you can there's some people that vibe off of it, and then feel that excitement in themselves when they watch it. So like if I can have that, it's a very important aspect to producing any kind of content, really. Like there's, for any infotuber that would be listening to this, I would definitely say have some passion behind what you're talking about. You don't have to be a robot about it. Like just enjoy what you're talking about, and the audience will catch the fact that you're enjoying it.
Right, for sure. And that could also inspire people to be more interested and enjoy it more themselves. Super cool. What is your favorite episode of Boundary Break you've made?
Oh, so this one's always a tough one to answer because there's so many episodes I produced, but I have a handful of favorite episodes. So I'm particularly proud of the episode 100, where I went through every generation of Nintendo up to that point, including the Game & Watch. That one is really good. And, there's like a couple of things on a creator level that I care about. I mean, as a viewer or someone listening to this interview, they may not understand why this would matter to me, but that's a video that got over 1 million views. That's easy to understand. But the fact that I think I'm featured on camera at the start of the video means a lot, because there's brand recognition, and then there's personal recognition. Like if I go to a convention, are people going to know that Shesez is walking around in it? That's debatable. You may have seen a Boundary Break episode, but do you know what the creator looks like? And so the fact that I'm at the start of that video and it hit over 1 million views, and like there was excellent animation transitions in between each generation of Nintendo, it came together so incredibly well that I'm particularly proud of that one. Another one that I really, again, it's funny because my favorite episodes aren't necessarily about the content. It's what I managed to accomplish in them. Another one that I really like is the first Animal Crossing New Horizons video. I got Vinny Vinesauce as a guest, and that one is particularly special to me because I like Vinny. I think he's a really interesting entertainer, and I've had him on the show before. I had him for the Mother 3 episode, and he sounded like, no offense to Vinny if he hears this, hey, no offense to you, but he just wasn't in his element. And so like he sounded very deadpan, like he didn't belong there kind of. And I was a little disappointed by that, not in him, but just the fact that I was like, you know what? I know that he's entertaining to people, obviously, because he's got a massive audience. I don't think I utilized his talents correctly as a collaboration with Boundary Break. So I did some critical thinking about how do I want to try this again, and I want to do it right next time. And so with the Animal Crossing episode, if you don't know who Vinny Vinesauce is, he's a streamer. So his personality is really what shines. It's what makes his brand, valuable. And so what I did for the Animal Crossing episode was I managed to blend the two worlds together seamlessly. I still did Boundary Break. I still talked about aspects and facts and stuff like that that matter to my audience. But in order to incorporate Vinny correctly, I instead I made this segment where I visited his world, and I was going out of bounds in his town in Animal Crossing, and used his reactions to those to those moments in my video, and it just served as great entertainment for fans of Vinny Vinesauce and my own channel. And like it turned out to be a well-received episode, and so I was particularly proud of that one too.
Yeah, I watched it like just before this. I really loved it. It was super, super entertaining. Just the best of both worlds.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And then one last episode that is a much shorter explanation is I do love my Metal Gear Solid episode because I got David Hayter to do the intro. Like he's Solid Snake, and he actually portrayed Solid Snake for the intro of my video. Which that was
I watched that right before this too. That was so cool. I had a big dumb smile on my face the entire time.
Yeah, so those are 3 big picks for me for sure.
Super cool, super cool. I know you mentioned this with Elden Ring, but I wanted to ask, do you have any plans for future Boundary Break episodes or games you plan to cover that you can tell me?
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII Remake is another one.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's Fortnite is one that I'm going to cover at some point. It's just one of those ones where you want to hold on to it until the time is right. So that will be another one. Outside of that, I don't have plans just yet. So, 3 episodes ahead it's pretty far ahead for Boundary Break, really. It's funny because there's always another game that's ready to go on the chop block by the time I'm done with an episode. So,
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Are there any games like that you have decided in the past specifically not to do for any reason? Like you considered but decided against?
Yeah, the first example of that was ever Poke Park Wii. So I've never even heard of the game, and then very early on, I had early fans, and there was one fan that was like constantly saying, "Do Poke Park Wii, do Poke Park Wii," and so I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then when I went into it, I realized there's no content. There's nothing underneath the map. The island itself is already zoomed out when you go to the start menu. So like me providing a zoom out has no value. And none of the Pokemon had anything inside them. There was like nothing interesting, not a single thing. So I had to shelve that one.
That surprises me considering how much is going on in Poke Park.
Yeah, there was like literally nothing. Not a single thing.
Crazy.
Age of Calamity is one. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was one where I was offered a camera, and the camera just unfortunately just could not do what I needed it to do at times where I needed it most. And on top of that, the game would lag. And so I was like, okay, this is just a miserable experience. I can't invest 50 plus hours in this game world where like it's blotchy, it's lagging constantly, and the camera is fighting with me at any given moment. So I had to shelf that one as well.
Right. That's a shame.
Yeah, that would have been a fun one to do if everything just went well.
Yeah, too bad. So then let's talk a little bit more about Region Break.
Oh, let's do it.
Yeah, okay. So what got you to start doing Region Break in the first place? What inspired that?
So it should be stated that there was at one point a YouTuber that I was watching named Josh Call. He was doing this series very similar. And then he stopped producing content for years. And, if I can be quite honest, I had forgotten that I even saw his channel because he had not produced content for 3 to 4 years. And then I was playing Japanese NES games on the Nintendo Switch. And I knew that there was differences between a couple of old school Nintendo games. And so I wanted to see how different it would be to play Zelda 2. And I start playing it, and the differences were immediate. Like the contrast was so vast and apparent. And I was like, this is really cool. So there may have been like a thought in the back of my head about Josh's content, but it really wasn't like, well, Josh was doing this, I can do it too kind of thing. It was literally like a kind of just like, I could definitely make this into a, not Boundary Break, but content that would be appealing to a Boundary Break audience. And so I produced the first episode. And then I remember, someone brought to my attention Josh Call, and I was like, oh God, I totally forgot, and I looked and it was like, well, there you go. There's a reason why I forgot. He hasn't produced any content in 4 years. So at that point I was like, if Josh ever wants to come back, I know that people make content similar to one another, but me personally, like I have my own thing and I don't mind just sticking to my own thing. So if Josh ever came back, I would sooner promote his content than continue my own with Region Break. But because there's no one taking up the mantle right now, it's like, hey, you know what? This is interesting stuff, and I can cover video games that Josh hasn't even covered before. And let's just see what my take on this whole idea is. And it has kind of evolved into its own thing. And yeah, that's like the legacy of Region Break.
Super cool, super cool. Kind of like taking up the mantle of this really good idea that just isn't being made anymore. That's super cool.
Yeah, and again, it's super fun to do too. It's a blessing that I can do something other than Boundary Break after 5 years.
I can imagine. I know you haven't done that many of them yet, so if you can't answer answer this, that's okay. But what is the most interesting thing you found in Region Break so far?
Ooh. That is a good question. I mean, like with the last episode, there was like a couple of enemy placements and stuff like that wasn't covered on the cutting room floor. It should be stated too, cutting room floor is used ever since Boundary Break and including Region Break, it is used as a let me pick up the pieces type thing in case I missed anything resource. It's not let me look at everything on the cutting room floor and then place it into my video kind of deal. I do like to discover things on my own right. And so as I'm covering this episode for Super Mario Brothers 2, I'm just about wrapping up. I have placements set everywhere so that I can jump to any part of the game. And I checked the cutting room floor website, and I was shocked at how many things were not featured on the website. Like Bezos that were flying left and right, or a tweeter. These are all enemy names from Super Mario Brothers 2. A tweeter that was behind two shy guys in a certain room and stuff like that. Like none of this was mentioned, and I was like, wow, this is like a lot of content that is not documented. So there was a lot of really cool things in that regard.
I'm honestly surprised, that I haven't seen a video like that, but there is so much in that. I didn't watch the entire thing, but there's so much in that I never knew about. And like with all the coverage that you would think the main Mario games get, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, seriously. Like the Doki Doki Panic manual, I don't know if it's ever been translated. It was certainly not an easy resource to find. I had to, enlist the help of Sky to translate it for me. And when I read it for the first time, I was like, this is really interesting. And drastically different from the opening for Mario Brothers 2. Like it's so similar but different in a way that it almost made me think, like it developed a theory, a game theory, if you will, in my head. That Super Mario Brothers 2 is actually a prequel to Doki Doki Panic, because it's like the events of Doki Doki Panic. It's the opening for is that Wart's already defeated, and then the page is ripped out. The last page is ripped out where he's defeated, and so they have to go back in and save Picky and Pocky. And with Mario Brothers 2, it's like, by all accounts, I suppose you could say that the events of Mario Brothers 2 is what happened before or in the book that they're reading of Doki Doki Panic. There's no reason to believe that that can't be the case.
Wow, interesting. So it's like they could exist side by side in the same universe.
Yeah, I don't see why not. They're retelling the same story. It's like pages out of this book. Only the Fuji TV characters are placed in there instead. So I thought that was really interesting. I didn't put that in the video, but I thought to myself, like, yeah, that's altogether possible. And again, the only reason why I even thought of that is because I've never prior seen a resource slapped in my face about what the backstory or manual story of Doki Doki Panic was.
Wow, super cool. Oh, real quick, I should ask this. There might be a few people listening who don't know what the cutting room floor is. Could you explain that real quick?
Absolutely. I'd love to. So the cutting room floor their website is tcrf.com, and it's a Wikipedia page essentially that is, I would say, run by a community, not a single person, where they document all sorts of really interesting video game facts like cut content, regional differences, and stuff like that. And it's not video content, but is instead put in the form of like images and descriptions. So if you're interested in either of my shows, the Cutting Room Floor is an excellent website. You should definitely check it out.
Super cool, super cool. I'll leave a link to that in the description too if you guys want to check that out. I highly recommend it. Okay, back to Region Break. What is the process of making a Region Break video?
Oh man, so basically I will take 2 versions of the game. I will run it through a streaming software now at this point. It didn't start off that way, but as I started trying to do Region Break for streams, it kind of it fell into place, honestly, where I found out it's much, much easier to stream the 2 games together and create like... So let me backtrack a little bit. So basically, because I'm using the streaming software, I can create visuals, like little areas where you can create like the flags on each side and have the footage hosted within the boxes that I created and stuff like that. It reduces a lot of video editing. So I've started doing that instead, where basically I will run 2 games at the same time. I will map the controls to both games at the same time so that my input on left and right on one controller is controlling both characters simultaneously. And and when I find something interesting, I just hit record on the streaming software and I collect footage that way instead. And it saved me an astronomical amount of time. And it also made it way less confusing. That was also a learning process for me too, is that I kept getting complaints from the audience. It's like, okay, you're flipping the US side with the Japanese side all too often, and I get confused. And it's like, okay. And then so I did that, and it was like, yeah, it's hard for me to figure out in a flash second which side is the US side and which side is the Japanese side, even when the entire video, I would put the US side on the left and the Japanese side on the right. People still got confused. So I was like, okay, we need to really hammer this in so that people don't get confused at any given point. So I made a faded American flag on the left and a faded Japanese flag, or just stark white, on the right, and then added the American flag and added the Japanese flag in the corners of each side. And I kept it consistent. Left side is American, right side is Japanese, and then I just made the layout for that, and now the games can just be housed inside those boxes, and I just record the footage that way. And then also I also have separate pages where you can just focus solely on the US version or solely on the Japanese version, and by clicking in between the scenes, it does a natural fade that will just get picked up on the recording as I click between the versions. So so a lot of editing gets worked out that way. And trust me, I would have never been able to do an episode like Super Mario Brothers 2 had I not had that process figured out by that time, because it just would have taken so much time to individually edit all that stuff together the way I was doing with the first 2 episodes of Region Break.
I can imagine. I think I definitely noticed that in your Mario Bros. 3 video, I think, because I definitely watched the entirety of that one. Super interesting. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah, that's where it started with Mario 3, and then I was just doing more of that with Mario 2.
Yeah, very cool. So how do you feel about YouTube as a platform?
It's fantastic in one way, and then it's very stressful in another. So I love the fact that, especially if you're not going for the career route, it's a wonderful platform to share any thoughts you have, or share any information you have, or provide any entertainment you want. And there will there's a good chance you can get an audience for it if it's good enough, if people really care about it. So I really, really like that about YouTube. I still use it as my primary entertainment platform to this day, beating out stuff like cable television and streaming websites like Netflix and stuff like that. But as far as making it as a career, it's very stressful, and it's a little soul sucking in a way, because there's the more you want to actually make it a viable career path for yourself, the more of yourself, the things you're interested in, kind of get taken away a little bit. And there's always exceptions to that rule, but like, especially in my career path, it was like, okay, I have to do it this way and speak in this quickly, and I have to avoid this, avoid that, can't do that. I can't cover that game because it's just not popular enough and stuff like that. Otherwise, people won't care. YouTube will pick up that people don't care, and they won't share it with anybody, and you're just kind of left by the wayside. And like, another thing too is that at a certain point, there's a glass ceiling for every YouTube creator. Like, I can't do like Summoning Salt numbers for whatever reason, no matter how interesting my content is, no matter how many websites write about my video or whatever. There's just a cap that I'm stuck at, where YouTube will not allow the content to flourish the same way that Summoning Salt content does. And that's a little bit sad. It's like it's a little stressful and a little bit annoying that what I'm working towards is just maintaining the success that I've gained, rather than being able to achieve a higher success than that. So that in itself is like a little bit disappointing, and I'd love to see YouTube find creative ways to fix that sort of issue. But I can't complain too much. I get a career doing what I love. I love creating YouTube videos. I'm my own boss, and instead of one boss telling me that I could do something slightly better every single day, there's thousands of people telling me that they love what I'm doing every single day. And like, I wouldn't give that away for the world. So that in itself is an enormous gift. And so, right. Yeah, so I really can't bite into the hand that feeds me that much, but that's probably my one major criticism, is that I don't think there's anything I could produce. I could produce the exact same video as Summoning Salt, the last video that he put out, and it would probably do a third of his viewership. And it doesn't make any sense that, that would definitely be the case. But aside from that, like I said, amazing platform. I love it.
Huh. Makes me really curious as to why that happens. Like, obviously your videos have the numbers already and like the work put into them. Obviously, you would think that they would appeal to the YouTube algorithm pretty well.
In a sense, they do. I definitely am a cut above a lot of my competition. And I think a large part of that is that I was kind of like the pioneer of it. But still, as far as the content that I am producing, I don't see too many people doing better than me when they attempt to do it. It's like the only time I ever see somebody do like banger numbers with the same concept as me is when they're covering a very specific game and they're already a massively popular YouTuber as a result of that. So it's like,
right.
Like someone doing Poppy's Playtime, they're going to make like 8 million views doing a boundary break video of Poppy's Playtime because they've only been covering Poppy's Playtime. And then if I cover a Poppy's Playtime video, it's going to do like 400,000 views. So, but like I said, if anyone's trying to be like boundary break Pepsi version, I've still managed to kind of be a cut above that at the very least. So, there's that.
Okay, interesting. Really makes me wonder if like Summoning Salt knows something that they're doing, like putting like the keywords or the tags or something.
I think with Summoning Salt's case is that he did a couple things very right. So one, he was the first to the scene. He's a pioneer of his own content, which is that's big. That's huge. Two, he really wasn't that bad when he was starting out. Like I was fumbling around and kind of doing a lot to kind of find my identity on YouTube as I was making more episodes. But Summoning Salt found his identity very quickly. Like there was a couple of changes here and there. but like they were minor and they were just small improvements to what was already a winning formula from almost the very start. So there's that, and then there's a more general appeal. Like everyone can understand the term speedrunning, but not everybody gets involved in the scene of it. So like it's a very catch-all kind of concept. So like it's very valuable content and very easy to understand content, very marketable content.
Right.
And the last thing, which is something that a lot of people probably don't consider, when you make a YouTube channel, when you start to get successful, whatever pace you're going at in terms of putting out videos, that's what the YouTube algorithm expects from you from then on. So he was always doing like one video a month, or one video every 2 months or whatever. And so the YouTube algorithm is programmed to think, okay, this guy has to put out a video once a month. And he really doesn't need a whole month to do a summoning salt video. Like, if I'm passionate about a similar subject, I could produce that video in like a week. But he takes a month, and he should continue to only produce one video a month, because it's the algorithm is rewarding him for keeping up with his own schedule that he made in the first place. So a big separation between me and him is that I started off weekly, and then as the content grew and expanded and became more complex, I needed that extra time. Whereas with him, he started at one video a month, and so the algorithm understands that he has a once a month type content and rewards him greatly to do that schedule upload. So that's like, it's an amalgamation of all those things put together that makes a much more successful channel, and I'm really happy for him. But yeah, I've thought about that stuff deeply, and that's pretty much, if I had to guess what was the recipe for why Summoning Salt is such a massively successful YouTube channel, that tells it all.
Yeah, he really came out swinging. Like, already had great like production quality on every aspect, really good microphone, really good audio setup, really good video, and also like that music is iconic already. Yes. Like even just the first video, you heard that music and it was like, whoa. Yeah.
He loves that 80s tech, like techno kind of, or 80s electronica kind of music that was used in movies back then. And like it really speaks to the nostalgic side of people my age, and then also younger people don't hear it that often outside of Stranger Things. So when they hear it, it's like this vibe that they never experienced before, and so they get into it as well. It's just a good sounding thing that's not used popularly in mainstream media anymore. So
it makes it super distinct too.
Yeah, exactly. It creates an identity that's just, it was lost in time and reintroduced. It was smart, very smart.
Yeah, incredibly smart. Dang. Also, the thing you said about like releasing your videos on a schedule, and like how the YouTube algorithm rewards you for that, I never knew that. That is some really good advice. I might actually have to consider that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, it's basically, once you get that one successful video, think about how you want to be working like 5 years from now. It's not something anybody ever wants to stop and think about, but seriously consider that. Like, if you're grinding really hard, stop as soon as you get that first viral video. Like, just immediately set a different expectation for the YouTube algorithm, and like do something that is comfortable for you, because that will prove itself to be a much healthier thing long run than doing what I did, which was I spent, like, I would go home from work and I would work from 6 o'clock to 2 a.m. every single night. And cut out a lot of friends and social events and stuff like that just to get stuff done on time. And once I was able to work full time, that only gave me time to do, even more work. And so instead of getting things done in a normal 9 to 5, I was expanding the wealth of the content, which, with the YouTube algorithm, that they don't care. They just care about, how often you're putting it out. So it wasn't the best route for me, but again, I'm still doing fine. It's just that if I could have arranged things differently, I would have probably maintained a schedule that is similar to what I have today, and still expand the content, but just like work full time and, just take 1 month at a time, or 2 videos a month.
That is super interesting. Wow. That's some really good advice.
Hey, yeah, any way I can help. for future generations, I'm happy to lend whatever I know personally. We're all kind of feeling around in the dark here on YouTube, but this is what I've come to understand as far as, my experience.
Right, for sure. The algorithm is like just so insanely complex. Like there's always new things being discovered, so many things that you can learn from so many different people.
Absolutely.
Okay. If YouTube were to shut down, what would you do for your content?
Oh man, I have thought about that. One thing I thought about was maintaining some level of entertainment on like Twitter or TikTok, and then but primarily getting funding from performing these things live. So like going from venue to venue. I would like to imagine that if YouTube completely shut down, there would still be people interested in my content, from the fallout. And at that point, that would be a great time to move in a different direction and just try to, do ticket sales and try to do it live. I have done it live with panels and stuff like that. It's basically training for maybe a potential someday going on tour kind of thing. Yeah, it's got its setbacks and also advantages. But yeah, so the plan would probably be a bigger push on Patreon for producing content on something like Twitter or TikTok, and then also coupling that funding with ticket sales.
Interesting. So like what kind of thing, what exactly do you do like at panels and stuff live?
I will take up to 1 to 3 games, and for about 2 hours, I will actually bounce off the audience, and I'll show them things that I know are in the game, and show them in real time, and I will also accept like people shouting from the audience something they want to see. So there's a lot of like audience engagement. There's like, hey, so what map should we look at next? And then people will yell out in the audience, and I'll pick out something that someone said in the audience, and then we'll go check out that level and stuff like that. While also coupling things that I know will be genuinely interesting. It won't be just like exploring uncharted territory. There will be some really good stuff to discuss and talk about, that if you go to these things, you will be entertained. So, there's a lot of that. And honestly, like, I love doing these things live. I know this is a little bit off topic, but one of the reasons why I keep doing these panels for free is because I love hearing the reaction from the audiences. Like, the disgust when we go up Wario's butt, or or the amazement when we check out like a projection screen that seems to tailor itself to wherever the camera position is, and so like we mess around with that and see what happens when we test that out to its limits and stuff. It's wonderful, So it's that coupled with just practice being in front of large crowds and stuff. So. Yeah, but it's a ton of fun. People usually walk away being very, very happy, because usually panels are just like your favorite creator will get up on a stage and just answer questions, and it's very quiet, and you're just kind of like learning more intimately about that person. But with me, I try to make it into like I call it like a live performance / party. I'm like your boundary breaking DJ, basically.
Boundary breaking DJ. Perfect. I love that. That sounds so fun.
Oh, it's a ton of fun.
Okay. Have you ever had any issues with Nintendo trying to take down your videos because you're showing something that they don't want other people to see?
Yes.
Or any other game company?
Yes. So one time, it was the Animal Crossing Part 2 New Horizons video. I put out a pretty good episode, and so it was getting media coverage and stuff like that. Now, this is speculation, but I believe what caused the trouble with this episode was that Kotaku picked it up. Love Kotaku, by the way, if anybody from Kotaku is listening. Love them over there. But this was an unusual case. Someone from Nintendo tried to take down my video, which had never happened before. I knew that they were aware of me, but and I knew that I broke some of their policies, but I think the idea was that I was harmless and popular and well-meaning, so they did not try to mess with my channel. And so in this particular case, Kotaku writes about me, and I think it was just the article title and thumbnail used for the article that probably really set off some sirens at Nintendo. And the name of the article was "The Animal Crossing Villagers in New Horizons Are Never Nudes." And it showed a picture of an Animal Crossing villager without any clothing on. And the reason why they said never nudes was because it's something that you can't see by normal means, but if you have absolutely no clothing on your villager, there's still a safeguard for the character where its model has a black texture over its body parts. More intimate body parts to prevent any accidental nudity. And, I presented it on my show in a very clean, sort of like, let's get analytical about this sort of way, not a like salacious sort of way, like it was written on the Kotaku article. So the video gets taken down. I have a chance to appeal, and I had a thought. I was like, it's like there's just so much lack of humanity when these sort of things happen. It's like nameless corporation takes down video. YouTuber usually just whines about it on Twitter for a little bit and moves on. But to me, like, these videos take a substantial amount of time to produce. If a video was taken down, that's like potentially half my income, maybe more if it was like supposed to be the big video, which in that case it was. I can be like, completely stricken of any sort of monetary income for that month. And I need to pay bills and, afford groceries and stuff like that. So I thought about it. I was like, why doesn't anybody ever try to appeal to Nintendo? I have a platform. I can't speak to them directly. I know I can't. But, I have an audience. And the reason why I have an audience is why YouTube, or rather Nintendo, saw my video to begin with. So I instead, and I did not do this. I was also thinking about this very sincerely. Like, I'm not doing this as a grandstand for my audience. I'm doing this to try to reach out to Nintendo in the only way I know possible. So I went on camera and I spoke as if I was speaking to Doug Bowser directly, and tried to explain to him what my content was, the intent behind my content, safeguards I use to make sure that developers are not losing money by people being influenced by my content and replicating my content and stuff like that. So basically, I tried to explain every aspect of my show in simple terms to these publishers at Nintendo, the legal side at Nintendo and the higher ups at Nintendo, to give myself a fair shake, and that also that I don't have any ill will or, negative feelings towards the company, and I can understand where they're coming from. But, I'm imploring them to just understand my side of things a little better. And a result of that was something you don't normally see out of Nintendo. They didn't revoke the takedown immediately, but their inaction allowed me to get my video back after a month. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and usually they're a lot better about upholding their takedowns after it had happened. So I think that in a small way, again, if you think about it from their perspective, if they had just straight up removed the takedown, it sends a message to me and my audience that like, oh, we messed up. My bad. We shouldn't have done that. But by being inactive, it's like a small way of saying like, okay, we'll throw you a bone here, but we're not going to do any action that would imply that we made a mistake. It looks a lot better on us if it looks like we just forgot about this,
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I like to look at it. And I got my video back. So,
that's better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a big win for me. I was like, oh, this is amazing. So, I'm very thankful to whoever made that executive call at Nintendo. And it has not shied me away from continuing to make Nintendo content. I really hope that they don't continue to try to take down any of my videos. But that was the one tumultuous time in my career when a game company tried to directly intervene with content I was putting out.
Huh. Super interesting. Wow. I'm surprised that they actually like decided to be inactive on it. I've never heard of Nintendo doing something like that before.
No, me neither. And, lots of testimonies basically are telling me, like, don't bother, don't try. We've all tried in the past. It just doesn't work out. So, and there was, like, a lot of people, too, that when I put out the video, they were humongous Nintendo stans and just were like, this is Nintendo's property. You don't have the right to it and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, God. Like, I mean, you're speaking with facts, sure, but, like, can you see outside of that for a little bit? Like, I'm just a guy that's trying to cause no harm to this company. I'm just trying to coexist with other YouTubers. So,
what issue could this possibly pose to Nintendo, honestly?
Yeah, exactly. Aside from, bad publicity with the Never Nude thing on Kotaku, I could see how that a company that values itself and family values could see that as a threat. So that's why
more on Kotaku though than anything. What a terrible way to title it.
It's very they were in their defense, they were looking for the most exciting way for a person to click on an article, and I suppose they accomplished their job very, very well. But it was unfortunately, it just kind of it lacked awareness towards Nintendo's values and how they would engage with me and stuff like that. Again, it's not even definite whether or not that's the reason why. It could have just been that someone from Nintendo just saw my video and just didn't like it. But like that was the first time ever in my, I think up to that point, 4-year career.
That's actually really surprising, especially with how like strict Nintendo is about this stuff.
Yeah, I've seen them, go after fellow YouTubers that I'm a huge fan of, and I've always wondered when it was me on the chop block next. But before and after that, no other problems with Nintendo.
Wow, interesting. Okay, well, I think we're at a good time to... No, wait, I have one more question I wanted to ask before we get to the final question.
Actually. I'm excited.
Okay, so your channel, you're at about 925,000 subscribers?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, so 26, close enough. You're kind of approaching 1 million subscribers, maybe like within this year, possibly. How do you feel about that?
I'm both excited and deflated. It's interesting because it's like I want to hit this goal so bad. You have no idea. Like just to have the plaque on my wall, and like no matter what happens in the future, I'll have that accolade forever in my possession. I achieved 1 million subscribers. That's an amazing achievement. Alternatively, the state of the channel is not at an amazing spot that a million subscriber channel would normally have. So it's like I'm already seeing it where people are like, he's a 900,000 subscriber channel. How dare he do this? How dare he talk about that? And blah, blah, blah. But like I'm still running with numbers that are like, similar to my 300,000 compatriots or like 200,000 subscriber compatriots. So like it just like it comes with a territory of reputation that I don't even get the benefits of, is basically how I also feel about it. So I know it's like you just want to be able to answer that question with I'm super excited, but that's the honest answer for you, is that I'm both excited and also just like a little bit sad that like I'm gonna have this added responsibility of a 1 million subscriber channel that like doesn't even reap the benefits of it really. So
yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, but there you go. That's your answer for you.
That's really interesting, though. I never thought about that, but yeah, that's like kind of sucks to have that responsibility forced onto you.
Yeah, that's the worst part. Like I've seen the change over time where like when you're a small time YouTuber, everybody's like on your side. Everybody's trying to be like, oh man, your content's super we have to do everything we can to get this seen by people. And then once you get over a certain point, you start to see people being like, I am so tired of this Shesez guy. I can't stand his content, And so like, there's just people coming at you in every different way to do something to make people like you a little bit less, so they don't have to see you on their Twitter timeline or whatever as quite as often. Yeah.
It's crazy how that changes.
Yeah. It's being in entertainment's a very interesting thing for sure. There's like you'd be surprised how much of this is understanding human psychology and adapting to it properly. There's lots of people that like get enraged, and then obviously they look like a psychopath to the thousands of people that they're shouting out to online or on television or whatever. And then there's people that kind of understand how the actual organic motion or evolution of things go when it comes to providing entertainment. So mine was not that messy. Like I kind of when I saw the initial changes, it was a bit of a shock. It took me like one step backwards for a brief moment of time. But then I started to like look around me and think about how other people experience similar things. And I was like, okay, I can get my footing back here. I can understand how this all works. So yeah.
Okay. Interesting. It's kind of crazy how like things change in that way from like just from this number makes you almost less of a person in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to explain it. It's like celebrity versus a normal everyday person are two separate things to a lot of people. Because all of a sudden I'm not a human being anymore. I'm a person with influence to a lot of people. I don't see myself that way, and I have to check myself often to be like, okay, I'm not just some random GameFAQs person anymore. I'm not just a random person with a small opinion. I'm a person whose opinion literally can affect people, whether it be like make them think the way I do or just enrage them because it's so off base with how they feel about something. So it's kind of like you have to fulfill that role even if you don't see yourself that way. Like I still to this day don't see myself as a celebrity. If anything, I see myself as just like a public servant, I guess. It's like kind of like, oh, I'm providing information to people, but I don't see myself as famous. I just see myself as giving information to people. Like I'm providing that service is basically how I view myself.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Responsibility sounds horrible.
You get through it. It's not too bad.
Okay. Understandable. Okay. This also came to my mind, but I'm like 90% sure this will be the last question I ask before we wrap this up.
Okay.
So your channel is called Shesez, not like Boundary Breaker, Region Breaker, anything like that. Why is that? Like it seems like Boundary Break is what you're more well known for. Like that's a more of a moniker for you, like the name of your show sort of, than Shesez is.
Yeah. So, if you recall very early into the interview, one of my greatest accomplishments was having my face in a million viewed video for the episode 100. In conjunction with that, Shesez is supposed to be my online persona, my alias, and there is value to having separation between your show and yourself. So, like, if I want to move on to other things, like for example, Region Break. There needs to be an understanding from the audience that I am not Boundary Break. I am a different entity from that, so that I can expand and do other things, so that I can be recognized as a person and not just a fulfillment towards the show. Like the show is still, I would say, inarguably, it shadows over me entirely, and it's always been a struggle from year one to have the audience understand or recognize me outside of Boundary Break. And again, the only reason why I have value for that or understand value for that is so that if I want to get booked for like a convention or something, that there's people will understand, like, oh, I'm going to see Shesez, I'm not going to see Boundary Break. I want to go say hi to Shesez. So I had to create an identity, and so I just came up with a name that just uses 2 syllables, and if you said it out loud in real life, you may accidentally say my name in a sentence. So that was the idea. It was like so occasionally someone will say Shesez in everyday conversation, like, oh, is Samantha coming to the movies tonight? oh, she says that she can, but she just needs to do a couple of chores first. And then it's like, oh, I said she says. That's right. The guy from Boundary Break.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, so that's basically where that all comes into play. And we're finally after like 5 years, seeing a positive effect from that, which is just that I can do region break and people in the audience will be like, this is a She Says production. That's cool. I liked Boundary Break and I can get behind region break. Let's go. Let's do it. And if the channel was just called Boundary Break, there would probably be a much more substantial amount of people in my audience that would be like, this is the Boundary Break channel. Why is this here? So that's why.
Super cool. Very interesting. Happy to hear that you've managed to make it that far. That's really neat to hear. I can imagine that the struggle between being separated as like a person from your content, especially when you make something so like distinctive with such a distinctive title as like region locked and Boundary Break. Not region locked. Oh my god. Oh, I said it. I've been like stopping myself so much and it slipped out. Okay. But I think we're good to go ahead and move on to the last question.
Alrighty.
It's been a wonderful interview. This is a question I ask at the end of every interview. I've ask every person I interview. If you could give one piece of advice to any creators out there, not like, it could be any type of creators, like specifically, just like creative people in general, people who are making anything, or specifically YouTubers, or specifically video game info tubers, what is one piece of advice you have?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice to making it on YouTube, even if it wasn't like that specific question, but like my best piece of advice is one that I give for people trying to make it on YouTube is have one of two things. It literally always takes just one of two things. It's either A, come up with an idea that people want to see that no one's ever done before, and that one's really tough, and I got really lucky with that. But there's still ideas out there. Just take like a whole afternoon to try to figure something out that you would watch yourself. And it's not, don't be a narcissist. Don't be like, I'd watch myself do anything because I'm amazing. Like, has to be something that you would watch someone else do, and you know that you would watch that other person do it. Or B, have a personality that is unlike anything you've seen on YouTube, or so disassociated from the YouTube platform. And by that, I mean, like, maybe you're thinking of like a 90s celebrity that was really popular that you just don't see even like an ounce of that personality in today's landscape or something like that. Or just you and yourself. You are so interesting and so unique that whatever it is you decide to do, people will flock to you because you are that interesting as a person. Examples of that are Video Game Donkey.
Oh yeah.
Like, love him or hate him, JonTron is another example of that, where he's doing things that other people are doing, but people gravitate towards that. Things of that nature. So it's one of the two. And like, if you can just focus your efforts towards one of those two things, you should at some point be able to do all right on YouTube. And whether it's A or B, you have to be likable, like either like likable as in like you're just a good guy or girl or whatever, or you're so angry at something that all these other angry people just want to flock to you and agree and feel that energy off of you, something. That's my best advice, but it comes down to two very primary components. Come up with something no one's ever done before, or be somebody, or give yourself as somebody that no one's ever seen before that people genuinely like.
Right. Could not agree more. All right. Super good advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on. She Says it was incredibly cool to have you. Honestly, like, super surreal for me to have you on after I've been watching you for so long.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And the questions were wonderful. I loved every single one of them. So thank you for coming up with these great questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. I always try to put a lot of effort into them. But, yeah. All right. Well, I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Hey, thanks so much for watching the 19th episode of the Create Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Saxum, and this is Conclusion Stuff, the podcast within a podcast where I conclude stuff. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. Seriously, all the times when I said it was insane getting to interview him and that I've actually watched his content since I was like really young, that I was a Gen 1er, that wasn't a joke. I wasn't making that up. Like, I've been watching Boundary Break for so long. Actually hearing his voice in this recording, hearing his voice talking directly to me was insane, but that's kind of something that happens with this podcast a lot, and it's really cool. This podcast has made me do some really interesting stuff, really cool stuff that I would never get to do otherwise, and I'm extremely thankful for these opportunities. Speaking of opportunities, here's 3 things that I think you guys should check out from my friends or other creators that I think are really cool. First one, you guys heard about Scp Sideshow? I think I already told you about that. I don't really remember though. I'm now on the team for it though. I am now one of the team members. You should go check it out. The Twitter for Scp Sideshow will be linked in the description. It is a channel on, it is not a channel, it is on Roku, on a channel called Otherworlds TV. If you have a Roku, you go and search Otherworlds TV on it, you'll find the channel there. It airs 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Sundays local time, so wherever you are, it'll always be at 8 a.m. There's also a YouTube channel where you can go check out the stuff that's on it. It is essentially a platform for people who make stuff within the SCP sphere to share their stuff, and it's also a really good place to learn about the SCP Wiki if you aren't already familiar with it. So if you're not a fan of the SCP Wiki, I would highly recommend you check that out. If you don't know what the SCP Wiki is, then you should check out my other series, SCP Authors Anonymous, my other podcast where I interview authors on the SCP Wiki. You don't need to know what the SCP Wiki is to be very entertained by that. The most recent episode I did, the Jack Council, oh my good god, it was such an insane mess, but in a good way, in a funny way. Second thing I'm going to recommend, my friend Tanrel, who I'm collaborating with on something for Scp Sideshow, recently changed their channel like immensely off some advice I gave them, and I think it is like really, really cool now. It was already really, really cool, don't get me wrong, but seriously, the changes they made, it's so neat. It's such a cool idea. Their channel is Gamma21. They make really good SCP readings, like seriously really high quality stuff over there. Go check it out. It's really, really good. Highly underrated. He does not get the views he deserves. Also, I really cannot remember if I already plugged the Creepy Otter or not. The Creepy Otter, not the Creepy Otter, I don't think. But go check him out too. He also does really amazing SCP readings, and we're gonna collaborate in the future too. And he did a reading of my SCP article that I wrote, 6443, which I will link in the description. It was a really great reading, and it made me so happy to see it get read. Creepy Otter has an amazing voice. He's wonderful. I love that guy so much. Third and last cool thing you guys should check out. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. I'm gonna try. El Navaja is a artist on YouTube who makes some really cool music. They are on the crew of Lemanberg Musical. This is how I found out about them. They recently released a song called Drifting on the 13th, about 10 days ago when I'm recording this, and it's pretty good. I'm gonna link that in the description. Go check it out. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching the episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Seriously, tell all your friends. It really helps a lot. Word of mouth is the best thing I can do for this. And yeah, if you're watching the premiere, oh, did I just hit my microphone with my pop filter? That's funny. I'm not gonna fix that. If you're watching the premiere, say hi and leave a comment. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.